Welcome back to What's the Good News, the best insider look at the real estate industry as a whole. No gimmicks or courses, only quality information on how to actually get deals done. We ask questions, we solve problems, and as always, we share the good news.
I'm your host, Michael Smith, and this is my very attractive co-host, Mr. Dominic Cardarelli, one of the best closers I know. And together we have 20 years of real estate experience. Now let's go close some deals.
All right, before we get started, if you like what you see here on What's the Good News, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to stay up to date with all of our latest videos. Let us know your thoughts, and if anything we cover here helps you in your own deals.
And today we have on the show Samantha Miller, who is a managing partner at Select Commercial Advisors. She has extensive experience in real estate acquisitions as well. She spent years with an Ivy League scientific research team. Really? She is also responsible for land acquisition, including identification and underwriting analysis of potential sites for development. And since 2020, she's closed 94 deals totaling 17.5 million of closed volume and 150,000 square foot of land development sites totaling 300 plus units to be developed. And as far as your personal portfolio, you have 9 units consisting of 3 single families and 3 duplexes. So with that, Sam, what is the good news? How are you?
What's up, Mike? Thanks for the intro.
The good news is
good news.
Good news.
Good news.
Thank you for the intro. I feel like my bio has a lot of numbers in it. I might have to work on that. Put some more fun stuff in.
Well, they're rock star numbers, so I wouldn't change them too much.
Well, thank you. Well, thanks for having me on. And where do you want to start?
Yeah, so I just say, tell the people where you're from and, how did you end up in Philadelphia?
Cool. I was born and raised in Northeast Philadelphia, so always been here, and I love Philly, so I just chose to stay. I like to travel and go other places, but Philly's always my home. My family's here, and I love the city. I got started in real estate, buying my first property in Philadelphia about going on 5 years ago. I was working at the University of Pennsylvania in a completely different career in clinical research. As you mentioned, the research team that I was on, they were building databases to collect data for patients with rare diseases and a couple other labs I worked in while I was there. At a certain point, I just decided I wanted to do something else, break out of my 9 to 5. I loved all the people I worked with. It was a great experience, but I just wanted something different. So I bought a property, got some roommates paying my rent, and thought that was pretty awesome, and wanted to figure out how to do more of that. I thought it was the most brilliant thing ever. I can live for free in a house that I own and have my roommates paying my mortgage and have the equity appreciation going up and mortgage getting paid down by my roommates. Good stuff. So I was like, how do I do this more? First, I quit my job. Then I found the answer to that question was that I possibly might need some more money, which I didn't have. So that was my grand plan, was to start buying more properties. And then when I realized I needed money, I got into doing brokerage and sales to help other investors buy properties, make some income, and then go back out and buy more properties.
Sweet. I find it very coincidental that most people, I don't want to say most, I'd say 65%, so more than average. That's kind of how they all got in real estate, is they started off house hacking, one way or another. And they find that oh, wow, these people are going to pay my rent. So then they're like, oh, I should do this more often. And it kind of, you scaled from there. So I've actually known you for a long time. So how did you end up in the physical fitness realm as well? Because I know that you had done that too. So when did that come into play?
I figured that would come up on this call. We met back, I don't even want to say how long ago, many, many years ago in the fitness world. And that was just a personal passion of mine. I couldn't quite figure out how to make a career out of it, or that I even wanted to. I just knew that I liked having fitness in my life. I was never good at sports ever. I suck at every sport that exists. I can't throw a ball, catch a ball, nothing, no coordination. But I obviously wanted to be healthy and get in shape. So, the gym was really the only thing I found that made sense for me, lifting weights. I'm coordinated enough to lift weights, it turns out, not for anything else, but I can handle a, squat rack and a bar. So that's how I got, grew a passion for fitness and dabbled in trying to turn it into a career via being a personal trainer or something like that. Studied kinesiology in college and thought about being maybe a physical therapist or doing something in the health fitness industry. But I think at some point I just realized I liked having that as my own personal side passion. I didn't want to monetize, that because it made it less fun. So it's something I still do. I've done a couple shows, done some things just for fun, but that's all I wanted it to be, was just my own personal, side hobby. You have to have a hobby. Everything can't be your business,
Very true. You'll go crazy.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. For sure. Same. Just out of curiosity. So you said that, you kind of made that bridge from a 9 to 5 into more so just, working for yourself. So I'm sure a lot of people that are going to be listening are kind of having that same internal struggle, right? Going from the security of having a job and then kind of branching into just taking that leap. When do you think you really knew that, working for yourself and having that confidence was there? When do you think that pivotal moment was?
I mean, there's probably a couple pivotal moments, over time, but the one that stands out to me was when I was working at the University of Pennsylvania. I just finished my master's degree, which I didn't intend all along to get an advanced degree. I just ended up getting it while I was there. I thought, hey, this could be a great way to set myself apart and, move up further in my career here. Worked really, really hard to finish that degree while I was working full time and working side jobs. Just, took on a lot. And then, at the end of that journey, getting the degree, I went back and realized, well, I mean, maybe this gets me a small promotion. Maybe this sets me a little bit apart. Maybe I could apply for a job that's X% above what I'm making right now. And I started just looking at the 30-year horizon of that track that I was on, that I could consistently aim for these small raises and promotions over time, contribute to my 401k, just started doing the actual math and realized, wow, there's never a point at which this is going to get exciting enough for me. I can keep pulling myself.
It never shook out. The numbers just don't shake out.
They just don't. And don't get me wrong. I mean, for some people, the trade-off of having a consistent, stable, source of income, you don't have to question where your next, meal's coming from. You have consistency and stability. I appreciate that. And still sometimes I'm like, I wish I had a little more stability, because this working on your own and working in sales or anything, business entrepreneurship can be a lot of up and downs. But I just could never go back to the 9 to 5 paradigm for myself personally. I think it's a personal choice.
I hear you. I agree. And similar transition for me as well. But, everybody has their own little story, how they got into it. But specifically, I mean, you do more acquisitions than you do most, I would assume now, right? Is that pretty fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, essentially, when it comes down to it, I'm doing the same thing that any other real estate agent would be the most common term that people would understand, as far as, that's what the license that I have. I'm a licensed real estate salesperson, and I represent buyers and sellers on commercial properties. But every agent kind of chooses their niche. Some agents do luxury sales. Some agents do mobile homes. Some agents do commercial, residential. I just happen to focus on this niche of working with developers who are acquiring land and development sites to be positioned for redevelopment or ground up, completely new construction projects. And I have done other things in between that are, slightly, tangential to that, but that's been my main focus. And at some companies, you might see somebody called an acquisitions manager who's just there to analyze the deals. And so that's the skill set that I learned up front, was how an acquisitions manager would analyze deals for a company that's planning to buy not just one property, but they have a sort of pro forma, a rule of thumb of criteria for purchasing multiple sites and a certain way that they look at properties. So I learned how a few developers that I worked with early on were analyzing and looking at, potential properties. How do we value them? How do we come up with offers? And then just made that my niche in the business.
Yeah. So how do you think your strategy differs from other professionals that do the same thing? Whether it be because you're primarily in Philadelphia, is that correct?
Yep, pretty much all Philadelphia. Starting to get a little bit into the counties within an hour around the city, but still primarily Philadelphia.
Yeah. So how do you think your strategy differs from other people out there? I mean, what sets you apart, whether it be politically, whether it's real estate wise, culturally? I mean, how do you attack it?
I don't know if anything I do is, certainly I'm not reinventing the wheel on anything. But what I think what I like to focus on in my business is two main buckets that I kind of consider to be my main MO for the day, right? So I have my the side of my personality that likes talking to people and forming relationships and networking. I made an effort early on to make that a big part of my business, to get really, really involved with a lot of the local Philadelphia groups, the networking groups, and not just showing up to events here and there, but getting on joining as a member, showing up all the time, and then getting on the panels, organizing meetings, getting in front of people at events and having FaceTime. So that's a huge part of my business, is that I spent 2-3 years building up, and I did it in a very focused way with people in the Philadelphia market. I didn't necessarily go global, international. I don't have a big online presence, but most people that are in Philadelphia development know my name, at least, because I've spent time kind of cultivating that network in Philadelphia. So that's the side of me that really likes talking to people. Of course, at some point, deals need to get done and numbers need to be analyzed, and you need to find opportunities and close deals. So the other part of my time is really spent knowing what type of deals my clients are looking for, knowing how to analyze them, and finding creative ways to get those deals done. Meaning, I might be able to find an opportunity that is just listed on the market for, a price that's getting stale, no one wants to pay, but I spend the time understanding the zoning code and how a developer might analyze that deal to figure out a way to make it more valuable. So doing that research and studying the zoning code, studying how developers underwrite deals. I spent a lot of time doing that, stuff that I feel is like the nerdier stuff that I like. I like that the research and the numbers aspect of the business as well. And that's a lot of time spent in front of my computer, pulling up numbers and spreadsheets and data and going through deals. But I like that side of it as well, because you can kind of get creative and find cool opportunities.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. What would you say, as of right now, are some of the bigger challenges based on what you just spoke about that you're facing in your business right now?
Challenges. Honestly, I think, we're in a challenging market, and that's kind of the giveaway answer. It's an interesting time right now, but there's always going to be ups and downs. I think at the end of the day, my biggest challenge in anything is always my own self and my own mindset. That's literally always going to be my only challenge, because it's always you against you, right? So there's always going to be something working against you externally, but my biggest challenge is always just my own mind, my mindset, making sure that I, maintain a level of optimism, positivity, find solutions to problems rather than complaining about problems. And that's a big challenge, I think, no matter what you're doing. It's not industry specific. I think we all battle with that. Yeah, no, I completely agree with that for sure. I think that's a struggle that every single real estate professional goes through. Yeah, any business owner, anyone's trying to do everything, really.
Yeah, no, 100%. Can you talk maybe specifically, I know you said that you focus a lot on zoning and stuff like that. Can you talk about, a potential project that was maybe more challenging than others that you've dealt with? Maybe, some of your hardest deals that you've had to close, and how you really worked through that and overcame that. Because I know from experience that, just when you think you're getting through, the chaos of a deal, right? More skeletons just rear their ugly heads out of the closet. And, I know some deals are easier than others. And I know that the deals that you're working on are significantly larger than, what maybe your average run of the mill real estate agent is doing, right? Whereby you're doing 40, 50 unit, developments, right? Which is, when you get up to that type of scale, there's a lot more layers and complexity that's involved in those types of deals, right? So maybe just talking about how you kind of overcame some of those challenges, and what one of the hardest projects was that you had to deal with.
Yeah, there's so many, and I try to look at them all as learning lessons. Every single one is different. You go through, you both know, you go through a different journey and experience with almost every closing. There's always, there's nothing, you think you've seen it all, and then X, Y, and Z happens, and you're like, wow, so I've been there with, any number of deals. I think the most challenging ones are where expectations, I think, are not set up front. I have deals where we go into it feeling really confident that it can get done based on what we think we know, right, about the zoning, or we think we know about the value of an area. And, we get into the conversations early on and say, 100%, this is done deal, right? And then things change, unexpected things come up. In development, for example, you might do some testing on the soil and discover that there's dirty soil on a vacant lot, and now you can't build anything on it. So all of a sudden you went into a deal thinking, oh yeah, we can do a home run, slam dunk, 100-unit building on this site. It's going to be amazing. We're going to make a ton of money. And then you go in and do the testing and realize, oh wow, you actually can't build anything on this. Or the zoning changes, or something you didn't catch in the zoning code totally screws you over, right? So those are the most challenging ones. I think my learning lesson now more than ever is to always go into every deal assuming, hey, look, we think we can get this done. This is what we think we know, but just having an appreciation for the fact that, especially in development, there's just always so many unknowns. And like I said before, it's something new. You think you've seen it all, and then you haven't. There's always some new thing that you're like, wow, I never thought that was something I'd have to consider before. And now I want to have that on my list to check every time I look at a site, like make sure there's no weird easements on the lot that make a certain part of it unbuildable, or these things that come up every time. I think it's not like one specific deal, but it's just those deals where, the unexpected happens, then we have to go back and renegotiate, or, tell people we need more time and have those tough conversations.
Yeah, what's funny is I think that every deal in its essence is the same, regardless of how much the deal costs. There's still the same steps apply. And you can't skip any steps, because as soon as you start skipping steps in the deal, then you have to go back to square one, Yeah. And more so than not, I'm always finding that the smaller deals are actually the hardest deals to get done, right? You're like, all right, well, I'll just do this little deal and, it'll be easy. And then, halfway through or whatever, the skeletons start flying out of the closet, and, people don't do what they're supposed to do. The expectations weren't met. People's egos get hurt, whatever the case is, or we find something new about the property or about the site, and then we have to retrade. So it's always the same thing. It's always the same steps, regardless of if it's $1 million project, $100 million project, or if it's a $50,000 deal. It's all the same steps.
Yeah, one of the best things I was just telling, I'm starting to recruit new sales agents to my team. So I was just having this conversation today with my team about something I learned from a residential agent way back when I first started, is this idea of like the straight line between the lead getting under contract and the closing. There's a straight line that exists, but the joke is that you're never on the straight line. It always gets off. Your buyers, your sellers, everybody involved in the deal is always straying from the straight line between, the initial deal conversation and the closing. You see the line, you know where it's going, and your job as the wholesaler, agent, person handling the transaction is you're constantly trying to get people back onto the straight line. And it's the same thing every time. The line doesn't change. The steps are all the same, but people just go all over the place, and it's just like wrangling them all back into the straight line. So yeah, you're 100% right about that. And as you were talking about the small deals, I just have something came to mind. Two of the smaller deals that I've done probably were, like you said, the most challenging. They were vacant land deals, but just things I had never seen before. One was a property that had been acquired by a bank that had closed down years ago and was merged with another bank. And anyway, we somehow got in contact with the people, got the deal under contract. It took 2 years to close this deal. It was like the smallest little vacant land deal that I ever closed, at least that year probably. But one of the big holdups in that deal was that we needed the city to release in Philadelphia, it's always a title related issue or something to do with the deed. They needed to do a reverter on, an old deed restriction. You guys have heard this before, right?
Yeah,
and
the RDA.
The RDA, and they wouldn't release it because there was trash on the lot. And so that was the first step was we need to remove the trash from the lot. And we're like, we can remove the trash today, but unless you come today, there's going to be more trash there tomorrow. This is Philadelphia. It's a vacant lot.
Right.
Anyway, moved the trash or whatever they wanted to see. And they came back out and they were like, well, we're good with the trash, but now there's a porta potty on the lot. Somebody had just abandoned a porta potty on the lot. It wasn't our companies. It wasn't the sellers. Nobody knew where it came from. So now we were responsible for figuring out how to remove a mystery porta potty from a lot in order to get the city to give us a release to close this deal. 2 years it took to get through this process because it would take so long to respond every time, and we thought we were good. And then there was the mystery porta potty. So
sounds like Philadelphia. That's exactly what it is out here.
Definitely sounds like Philadelphia for sure.
Yeah.
So on the flip side of that coin, let's talk more about like a home run deal or a successful deal where, you know, everything just kind of fell into its slot and it was a home run for you, whether it was a commission, a fee, or your own personal portfolio where you bought something where it just was a great finish at the end.
Yeah, definitely. I'll give two on that one. One personal one, and then one for a client. So the one for the client was I was talking before about understanding the zoning code. So this was probably one of the easiest deals I closed for this client, a developer who was looking for land or sites where they could build, 10 to 20 unit apartment buildings, right? So that was my goal for the year, is find a bunch of these sites. And I found this one that I think I was saying before. Sometimes you find something that's listed out there in front of everybody's face, but they're missing how to underwrite or see the value in it. So this deal was just listed out there, but it was mismarketed in a couple different ways. It was a property that actually had 3 properties consecutive within one package. The same owner owned 3 parcels in a row. But the listing made it seem as if there was only one. Based on the way the address was recorded, the pictures, it seemed like it was just one instead of 3. So right there, people that are looking at the deal are thinking, oh, they're asking this much money for just this one little parcel, not understanding that there was actually 3 times the square footage there. The second thing was that the MLS had not updated from the city records from the most recent zoning changes. And this was a rare case in Philadelphia lately where the zoning had been up-zoned, not down-zoned. We talk a lot about them taking, good multifamily zoning and taking it down to residential. This was a weird case where they actually took already a mixed-use zoning code, but they up-zoned it to a more dense zoning code. But the MLS in the listing had not synced with the city data to update that information. So I just quickly double-checked it and noticed actually this parcel, you can do twice as many units as everybody out there is thinking you could possibly do on it because of that zoning change. So some people were writing probably because they thought it was only a third of the square footage, and I found that it was actually 3 times that, and then discovered that not only could you do it was 7 units based on the old zoning, you could do 14 units. So, we got that deal done at very close to the asking price. We didn't have to haggle much because the asking price, in fact, was very good for what it turned out to be. And it was just the smoothest closing. I mean, there was really not that many issues. They were probably happy because they were like, well, we're getting pretty close to our full asking here. But it was much more valuable to us. So, that was a nice win, just finding something, something in the code that made something more valuable than others might have thought it to be. On the personal side, just one of the funniest things, I've done a lot of my own personal purchases, some single families, some duplexes with partners where we do some renovation, rent it out, the BRRRR strategy. They're all really hard, as it turns out. It's not as easy as they make it seem. These deals take 10 times longer you think they're going to take. They go over budget. There's all these challenges. But the one in my personal portfolio that is the best one is the cheapest property that I spent the least amount of money on, that rents for the lowest amount per month and is in the worst area. That one property is my most cash flowing property. And not even by a little bit, it's like double the cash flow of any other property that I have in my portfolio that we've spent exponentially more money on in time. We got that deal, that we were in and out of that deal in less than 60 days probably. So yeah, that was my little personal portfolio win, was just realizing, sometimes it's the small, easy ones actually that are the best ones, the ones that you put the least amount of work into.
Yeah, that's for certain. I mean, there's definitely something to be said about, I don't want to say bad areas. I want to say, lower income areas. I've talked to several people regarding, everybody's fearing like there's going to be more of a low income trend for rents now. But similar story. I mean, some of my best cash flowing properties I got for very cheap. They're in bad areas, but people pay the rent and it never bother me. And they're the highest rents I get. I mean, in terms of, versus a debt service, because they were so inexpensive to begin with. So I can relate to that. And two other things you said, which I thought were interesting, were I've noticed that a lot of times agents don't read descriptions. Like they don't read the listing. They look at the price, they look at the pictures, and they keep it moving. And I don't know why this is. I mean, people will call me all the time and ask me questions that specifically I answered them in the description in the listing. That's why they afford you the opportunity to write a description, right? So it sounds like, that agent may or may not have either written it or it was bypassed by several other agents that just looked at the price and kept it moving. And secondly, what are your thoughts on, and there's this strange dynamic of people thinking that if something is on the MLS, it's not a deal. Are you familiar with this craziness?
I've heard that before.
It's crazy to me because I'm like, if it's a deal, it's a deal, regardless if it's on the MLS or not. So what are your thoughts? I mean, did you buy that property on the MLS by any chance, or was that an off-market property?
No, that was on the MLS. And out of, 90 some transactions I've done, I've gone back and done the math, and like a third of them are on the MLS, probably more than a third, but roughly speaking, a third of them are, and the rest are off market. But then from there, it's a mixture of direct to seller, and also the other third would be like intermediaries, like a wholesaler or an agent, but it's an off market deal. So like there's no on market, off market, agent, wholesaler, direct to seller. Like none of them is better, because if your argument is that you think one of those sources is the only source for good deals, then you're also trying to say that every single deal that comes from that source is good and never has a bad deal. And if you're telling me that you're on a wholesaler list, or you're going direct to seller and talking to people, and you never come across a bad deal in those scenarios, like you have to first of all know what a good and bad deal looks like. There's going to be bad ones in all of those channels. And the point is that you have to know what a good deal looks like to you, right? Whether it's an agent sending it to you, you're sending a postcard, it doesn't matter like what the source is. Like you have to know what a good deal looks like to you, and then you'll see it. Like you said, if you're paying attention to descriptions on listings, or you're studying a market and you just know what the values are, so that when something comes on the MLS that is underpriced, you'll know it sooner than somebody else. It's knowing what you're looking for 100%. Yeah, there's no good, or there's no secret place where all the good deals hide. Like everyone wants to know where only the good deals are. I'm like, if I had the answer to that, I wouldn't be sitting here still like, it would be a different conversation.
For certain. Me and Mike have noticed too that, when we're talking with sellers, there's almost like this fear that they have about listing things on the MLS, and I'm not sure why, or what it's like almost taboo, like putting something on the market. Have you noticed that at all, Sam?
Yeah, I have my sellers who come to me and say, well, I want full price for the property, but I don't want you to show it to anybody. I don't want to list it. I don't want to give out any information about the property. But I want actually more than anything else in the area has ever sold for. I'm like, these are two different things. It's one or the other. You either, get the most exposure you possibly can on it and have a chance of getting, a really, really good price, or, a higher price, or, you do it in secret, but you got to sell it at a discount then.
Right. They want that magical third option, that magical unicorn that unfortunately just doesn't exist.
Yeah.
The person that comes from out of town and is like, I have buckets of money and I just want to buy this property because I love it for no reason. Yeah. If I ever meet that person, that'll be the day I quit.
Yeah, I'm sure to sell them everything.
Yeah, sell them everything.
So
that's funny.
Why don't you name your cap now?
So, we like to kind of get an idea of, people's investment strategies that we speak to, and, everyone's got their own kind of formula that they do, or kind of metrics that they use to judge whether or not a deal makes sense for them, right? So, we like to call this name your cap, right? Like, where do you need your minimum cap rates to be in order for a deal to make sense, and why is that your number?
Yeah, it's a tough one to give a specific number to, because it depends on the property type and the market and a lot of other factors, the strategy. But for a lot of my clients, if they're looking to purchase a property that they are going to add value to, so they're going to renovate it, or develop it from the ground up. So they're going to buy it at a certain price, add value, force appreciation, and exit it either through refi or sale, right? If that's the strategy and the approach, it's not about there being a certain cap. It's about the spread between your entry cap and your exit cap. And for most clients that I work with and people I've spoken to, you really want there to be like a 200 basis point spread there, or at least 150 for it to make sense. So example, you're going into a property and you think that you can build a ground up development and stabilize it, collect income. And when you do that math on your personal all in price on the property and what you're getting in rent just for you to hold it, maybe you're, for example, at an 8 cap. Doesn't matter what the number is, but say you're at an 8 cap, you want to know that the value on the sale or refi and the appraisal will come in then at a 6.5 or 6 cap. You need there to be a spread. So the same numbers would apply, or the same spread would apply if you built it to a 5 cap, you need to sell it on a 3 cap. Right? So it's just about the spread between the numbers, and that's going to change in every market. Your California and higher end markets, your caps are going to be lower, but you still need there to be a spread. Versus if you're in an area that's more of a what we call a cash flow market, there's not a lot of appreciation happening. Maybe it's a lower income area. You need those caps to be higher, but you still need the same spread, 8 to 10, 7 to 9, whatever it is. For a stabilized asset, you have somebody coming in, they just want cash flow. They're going to look for, depending on how they're structuring the deal, like a good cash flowing multifamily property, for example, they at least want like an 8 to 10% return on their equity going into it. So not a cap rate, but just a cash on cash return. So whatever that cap comes out to, that's just a matter of making sure they're buying it at the right price based on what the area is worth. But they want to know that they're at least getting an 8 to 10%, maybe up to a 12% return on their money.
Surely. Or they have like a high IRR.
Yeah, depending, is this a short-term hold, a long-term hold? Is there a refinance, point in the holding period? So all these things would factor in.
So if you didn't do real estate, Sam, what would you be doing? What other passions do you spend your time on, or more? If you have time, I mean, it's hard to have time, but if you did, what would you do? What would you be doing other than real estate?
Yeah, it's always a harder question to answer than I would think. I feel like I should have more hobbies, and my hobbies are just working more, I think. But I like traveling a lot. I like exploring, and I can do that in my business, which I'm lucky enough to be able to do. I love exploring new areas, getting to know new markets, and sometimes that looks like just traveling out of state, out of country, and going on an actual vacation. But luckily for me, I get to do that in my line of work. If I have a client that's interested in a new area, then it's actually part of my job to go out and explore an area and understand how is this market looking, what's happening out here, who are the people, what type of retail is here. So like city exploring, I guess I would say. That's my hobby. And if I wasn't doing real estate, I would do that anyway. I mean, even if no one was paying me to do it, I would still just go around and wander around in cities and be like, well, I think this is a very charming area, even though no one was asking for my opinion.
I just want to confirm that if you didn't do real estate, you would just go ahead and do real estate, right?
I just go ahead and do real estate. Yeah, I just wasn't getting paid for it for free.
That's very interesting.
Yes.
So, who do you think is the most influential person that's impacted your life up to this point?
I can't peg it to one person. I'm easily influenced, actually, I find. I'm constantly inspired by everybody that I meet and can be easily influenced. But I say that in a good way. I think over the years, like going back to the beginning, I said I spent a lot of time in my business on the networking side. That's a big, important piece of my day, my business. That's how I started out. The first gig that I ever had in real estate is through somebody I met at a networking event. The second gig, everything was through networking events. And so the people that inspire me are literally my clients, my colleagues, the people I work with constantly, because in this business, there's just, again, so many ups and downs, so many different ways that you can go, so many ideas that sound interesting. And for me, I found a niche that I'm happy in, but I love the fact that I get to talk to new people all the time, and they can tell me about their ideas, their journey, and I can just help with a small, aspect of it, helping them buy or sell property, but they've got a whole journey that they're going on, right? Like a whole reason behind their business model. So I'm constantly inspired and influenced in a good way by my clients, people that I've met over the years. who are just all amazing to me and come up with these great business strategies and plans while they're also, raising families or working 10 other jobs. People just constantly amaze me. So
cool.
That's about it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So kind of like a forward-looking question, right? It sounds like you do a lot of diligence and kind of just analysis when you look at things. How do you see the market evolving as a whole over the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, as a whole, certainly in the short term, maybe not 5 to 10 years, but even just looking at the next couple of years, we are in a pivot in the market where we think, right, we won't really know what's going on until 5 to 10 years out. But I do think we're on the brink of dipping back into a buyer's market, dipping back into a market that cannot depend so much on financing and is going to be driven by a lot of cash buyers. And I think that's really in the short-term horizon, what we're looking at, and a real need to get creative on deals. People are going to have to figure out ways to deal with a lot of the things that came out of the last few years, like so many properties being so highly leveraged, right? Or people with portfolios that are like just stretched really thin and want to get out of them, but how if you're over leveraged on a property? So we have all these interesting obstacles that we'll get to face, I say in a positive way, over the next couple of years as the market turns and people want to figure out how to trade and buy properties, but it's not going to work the same way it's been working, right? So that's the short term. But it'll go back around. These things, switches, seller's market, buyer's market, it's always going to go around in a few turns. But over 5 to 10 years, the thing that I'm seeing the most is people rethinking spaces in general, rethinking how people live as a result, especially of the pandemic and just other things that are happening in life, and advances in technology pushed forward more quickly during COVID. Hey, all of us can work from home now, right? There's this huge conversation around what life looks like now, and that has to get reflected in building designs. The way we build buildings, the way we renovate buildings, the way we operate buildings going forward is on a 10-year horizon. It's just not going to be the same. Everything from apartment buildings skewing towards one bedrooms with a bonus room for an office because they know all their tenants are going to be working from home, and then putting cold storage in the ground, having storage facilities on site because everybody orders everything off of Amazon, needs a place to store everything, and then orders food and gets it delivered. So reimagining the way that buildings are built based around lifestyle, that's very much a part of the conversation, as well as rethinking certain property types like office buildings. Are those ever going to look the same? Are we going to have downtowns that are full of floors being rented out by individual companies? Or are we going to have more co-working spaces, mixed-use spaces, properties that have a combination of residential, short-term, hotel, office, co-working? There's just a lot of rethinking of how buildings will be used and how new buildings will be built, both on the commercial side and the residential side. So I think that's important to. It's not going to change overnight, but important for everyone to kind of have top of mind looking forward.
Yeah, I highly agree. What are your opinion of malls?
Malls. They're a great place to step in when it's raining or snowing outside.
They work well for shelter. That's about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're just going to be shelter places. I grew up in the Willow Grove area. So there's the Willow Grove Mall up, that was the closest one to me. Last I heard, I'm pretty sure they're just proposing to turn that whole thing into a development site. I don't know. That's just what I've read and heard. But this entire mall, like that, I was there my entire life, like decades of just that mall being there. Individual stores would change out, they would renovate over time, but there was never a question of it just closing down that I knew of, at least. But now the conversation is, well, maybe we just scrap this whole thing, make it into residential. So I think malls are, people buy everything online these days, right? And I don't think that means that retail and in-person shopping for goods is going away, but I was at a really good Biz Now event recently where Peter Lindman was speaking, and he had an interesting thought about the fact that COVID sort of forced us to learn really quickly what people will and won't buy online exclusively. just because of the fact that, that's what was happening during that period of time. People had to stay inside, had to figure out where they're going to, stores were closing down. So it was this short period of time where, like, for example, he said, he didn't think grocery did as well online, right? But everything else, like books, certain items are going to just exclusively be online now. There's no way to get that back in retail, but other things, people still want the experience of walking into a store. They still want to shop for their groceries. They still need to go to a gym in person. They still want to sit down at a restaurant. They want experiences like doing escape rooms and, things like that. They want the artisan shops, that they have the experience of walking into a more, small boutique artisan type of shop, even if they can buy those goods online. So we learned real quick, like, what types of retail people will and won't tolerate going online versus being in person. So long story short, I'm not sure how malls fit into that, but I think you're just going to see a move towards more like walkable retail, like you see in Center City versus these big, massive malls where most of the goods traditionally in there are things that we can now purchase online.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the overhead just on that alone, just the leasing and the employees, like I'm sure that they found out really quickly that if they could just get direct to seller online, they would, I guarantee that their profits went up at least 25%.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you cut down the overhead and get right to the direct to seller. And there's still, again, there's those experiences like the food, dining, or things that malls will have, but it's just, you need that much space for that. Like, is that going to make sense? What are you going to fill up all the other square footage with? I don't know if it'll justify it long term. Maybe they all get converted into mixed use, residential plus ground floor retail or something like that.
I mean, I truly believe that the food court will never go anywhere. That was my favorite place in the mall.
Oh yeah, for sure.
That was my favorite place to go.
Yeah.
Did you ever work in the mall?
I'm sure I did. I used to sell cologne.
Cologne?
You're one of those guys just escorting people as they walk by, huh?
Yeah.
Oh my God, were you really? You were one of those people that would just like spray?
Oh yeah.
That's amazing. I worked at Claire's. Do you remember Claire's, the jewelry store?
My daughter loves it.
Oh yeah, I did. I was, I worked in the store and also did ear piercing in I think high school and college or something like that. Yeah.
You know what? When I used to work for LA Fitness, the mall was the best place to just prospect potential people to just sign up, right? You're just walking around the mall, hanging out. You go to the food court. You're gone for like 5 hours just hanging out. And,
would you go to the food court and be like, I see you're having this giant milkshake. Like, what are you going to do to burn off this calorie? Come over to LA.
Exactly. Yeah, that was always a good time. Always a good time.
Yeah, until the security guard kicked you out.
They had tell me that they didn't have your face up on the, somewhere like on a poster that says,
they
don't let this
did.
be on the wall.
Oh yeah, I was the most wanted guy in that mall for certain. Absolutely. Oh yeah, they were looking for me. So, is there anything that you would like to mention or share with our listeners that you could recommend in terms of like books, articles, websites, and kind of just your go-to place for resources and things that have impacted you in terms of education?
Yeah, I mean, starting out, I was always on Bigger Pockets. It's one of the, more popular resources out there. It's a great place to start and get plugged in and get some basic information. There's so many books, so many sites, podcasts, but I mean, for me, I think the pivotal thing is getting plugged into the real estate network in your market or whatever market that you're trying to do business in. So meeting with real people, like getting FaceTime with people at events, going out, shaking hands. I think that's the best thing I can recommend. And for me here in Philadelphia, that's the RIA that I go to, Real Estate Investors Association. There's usually one in every area. And I'm really involved with that group. And Another group that I'm on the board of and love very much is WIRE, Wellness for Women in Real Estate. They have chapters in a handful of different states, including Philadelphia, and they get women together that are in commercial real estate and do fitness and wellness type activities and fun things like puppy yoga or sailing classes. And it's just a fun way to network and meet people. But no matter what you do, I think that's the most important thing is getting involved with some type of group organization and really making connections, not just showing up here and there, but consistently showing up in a group. Doesn't even matter which one. Show up and make sure people know you and you know them.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, that's another thing that's how I learned. I mean, I went to meetups. Meetups. I beat the shit out of meetups. Like I just went to every one. You know what I mean? I went to every one I could possibly go to. I remember going out to like 3 times a night. My wife was like, "Where are you going? Where are you going on a Wednesday till 10 o'clock at night?" So, but I agree with you that's definitely, at least from my perspective, that's definitely how I was able to meet people and learn the industry and kind of just piggyback on the shoulders of giants at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. That's where it all is. And so many of the questions that people have in the beginning, there's so many different answers to the same question, but the fact that you're asking the question of someone that's really active in the business local where you are, you're going to get a much better answer than Googling. You can only Google so much, but you really got to talk to people that are active in your area and get the sure, that's kind of the answer, but really in real life, this is what it's going to look like because I just did a deal over here and here's how that panned out. That's the kind of information that you want. So
this last question is very important that you listen to it. So if you won the lottery for $5 million tomorrow and you could not spend it on real estate, what would you be buying?
I would buy real estate. Okay, not real estate. What would I spend it on? Oh, man, that's kind of a hard. Am I allowed to pick a different investment vehicle, or does this have to be just like a fun thing?
You can buy whatever you'd like. You just can't buy any real estate.
Just can't buy any real estate. And I would still, the boring part of the answer, still spend some of it on investing. I couldn't stand to spend that much money without knowing some of it was invested. But, let's say I invest some of it. What I do with the fun money on the side would be traveling. I would just go everywhere. I would travel places, like I would stay in the most expensive hotels. Like I would get the full 5-star experience. I would just go everywhere I could possibly think of and have, the best time. Just travel everywhere, Europe. I want to go to Paris. I want to go to Italy. There's so many places I want to go. I would just go on a traveling spree.
Sweet. You get real bougie.
Yeah. Get real bougie. Yeah. Why not?
Yeah.
That's a great answer. And you should.
Yeah, as you should.
We thank you for sharing all the information with us and anybody else that's following the channel. If you want now, just talk about any upcoming projects you have or any recent transactions you've done that you're proud of, and tell people how to get in touch with you.
Yeah, definitely. Well, last year we launched a website that's specific to the brokerage side of my business, which is, again, Select Commercial Advisors, so select-ca.com. We've got a bunch of great deals listed right now, development opportunities in and around the Philadelphia area. So that's what I'm working on at the moment and that I'm excited about. And I'm also, again, still very involved with a lot of the networking groups that I'm in. If anyone's around in the Philadelphia area, the 31st of January, I'll be on the panel of the deal pitch night at the Philadelphia area, the Real Estate Investors Association. And yeah, that's about it.
Well, I'm very excited that you spent some time with us, and I'm sure I'll see you soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys for having me. This is fun.
Absolutely. And as always, it's always the good news, Sam.
The good news.
Always the good news. All right, guys, if you liked what you saw here, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. And once again, Sam, thank you so much for sharing the good news with us today.